All right, so I have actually updated the slides. So this is new stuff that I posted. I added to the chapter 7, inventory management, and the slides on Scholar are updated, okay? I'm probably gonna do a couple of more updates in the next few days, but yeah. All right, so you have access to all of that, right? So as promised, today we're not going to discuss anything numeric, because it's the last day, first half of the semester, right? Our next class actually is going to be in, what, like 5 days, right, or so, okay? So today's lecture is going to be, let's call it soft, right? But in my little opinion, the topic is pretty interesting. It's about RFID. So, without looking at ChatGPT or Google, what is RFID? What does it stand for?
Free.
Free? RFID. This is an abbreviation. What does it stand for? Well, ID stands for identification. What's RF? Radio frequency identification. Okay? So it's the technology that's been in development for some time by now, okay? And it's not widely adopted in supply chain management, but you know, eventually, probably it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger adoption. Okay, so let's start with what is exactly RFID. Well, barcodes. Let's start with them. Okay, you all know what barcodes are. They look like this, right? What do we use to read the barcode? Scanner, right? So it's like a laser gun, right? Go to Home Depot, buy something, and they have this laser gun, right? You scan it, and that's how the system knows what it is. So barcode, essentially, what's inside of that is a number, encoded number, and not even one number, but a couple of them, actually, okay? So barcode was a pretty big leap in productivity when it was introduced. Why? Because, well, first of all, they're cheap, right? Barcodes. I mean, usually barcodes, they either like printed on the product itself, right? It's already on the packaging, or if you don't have that printed, then you can just, you know, print a label with a sticky note, right, with a sticker, right, put it on the box, and that's it, pretty much, right? So it's very cheap. But what it eliminates, manual labor, right? So without barcode, you will need a human at the checkout, right? And the human needs to manually punch in the number, right, for the product, and then the system will know what is it, etc., etc. So barcodes eliminated humans, right? You can scan it, and the system somehow knows what is that you are about to buy. So how exactly does that know? Well, you can see here in this picture, right? It actually consists of several numbers. It's not just one number. So first part of the barcode is the manufacturer information, right? So somehow the number identifies the producer of that particular item. And then second part of the barcode, that's the product itself, right? What is that you're buying, right? Item ID or item number or serial number, whatever it is, right? Okay, so the thing about barcodes is, in order to be read by the laser gun, you need to point it, and you need to be pretty close, right? I mean, it works at a distance, but you know, go like a couple of, like, you know, five feet away, and probably it's not going to do it, right? So you have to be pretty close. So what does the RFID again stands for? Radio frequency identification. What does that do? Essentially, it's a next evolution. It's a replacement of the barcodes with the technology that does not require, first of all, direct line of sight. So you don't need to point laser gun exactly at the label, okay? So it does need to be in the direct line of sight, okay? And second, actually, it does not even require humans. So that's what's cool about that. But of course, it comes with its own set of issues, right? So let's discuss how exactly this thing works. I'm sure you've seen that before, right? This is something that's called RFID tags. How does the library know that you're trying to steal the book from the library without checking it out? Well, flip through the pages, right? Somewhere you will find this thing, right? And that's the RFID tag, okay? And same thing with like retailers. So you go to Walmart or Macy's, right? If you try to carry out, jeans without paying, it will probably start screaming, right? So there's like this siren will go off, right? How does it know? Because jeans have this thing attached to them, and that's RFID tag, right? So what exactly is the RFID? So what goes inside of that? In the middle of that, there is a computer chip, okay? So, but it's really basic chip, so the cost is fairly small, so it's nowhere even close near to what the chips are like in your cell phone or computer, right? It's very basic, so it can only record a very short number, and that's it, okay? And then there is an antenna. So how does the whole system work? There is a RFID reader, or sometimes it's also called interrogator. So to read the information from the tag is sometimes it's pronounced interrogate the tag. Okay. So what's the RFID reader? It's also a fairly large antenna connected to the, well, let's call it special purpose computer, like small device. Okay. So the device periodically sends the impulse through the antenna, right? It's like current essentially goes through the antenna, and antenna generates the radio frequency wave. So that's why it's called RFID, radio frequency, okay? So the wave goes out in the big scary world, right? And if there is a tag somewhere close in the vicinity, what happens is the tag replies back. And antenna captures that response, all right? So the tag says something, right? It sends the wave back, antenna captures the wave, and what's inside this wave, this signal that the tag generates, it's essentially the product code, let's call it, right? So the same information that you would normally record with the barcode tag, it's the same information recorded electronically inside the chip and now communicated out from the chip to the reader through the electromagnetic wave, okay? So notice that there is no human here in the picture, right? Antenna sends the wave, tag replies back, antenna captures the reply, and then what happens? So essentially antenna is reading the content of this number as recorded in the tag, right? Then reader sends it back. So here I'm being vague, right? It goes into the network, whatever that means, right? And then something happens to it in the network. We're going to discuss that in just a few minutes, okay? But that's the idea, how the reading happens. The reader sends the wave, tag replies, antenna captures the reply, and sends the number that it captured down through the network to some other place. We're going to talk what exactly is that other place, right? But first, let's discuss the different, evolutions, right, of the RFID tag. So the research in the tag started a long time ago. But it started just like everything else, right? So the first iPhone was junk, basically, right? It had like funky screen, small, kind of, weird, right? But that was the first design. And then it got refined, and more refined, and now we have something that's much thinner, with much bigger resolution, with a bunch of capabilities. Same thing happens with every product, and RFID tags is no exception, okay? So there are generally 6 classes of RFID tags. So first 3 classes, 0, 1, and 2, they are called passive tags, okay? And 3, 4, and 5, they're active tags. What's the difference? The difference is passive tags do not have the power source. In other words, battery. True or false? In physics, to generate the wave, you need the power to send the wave out. But otherwise, we would call it perpetual, mobile, right? Perpetuum mobile, right? Never-ending engine, right? So you have, in order to send the wave out, RFID tag needs the power, okay? So where's the source? In passive tags, there is no source. The source is the wave itself. So in other words, our reader sends the wave, and you can see, right, even on this picture. So the wave coming out of antenna is a big, fat, powerful wave, right? The tag captures this wave, and part of the energy of the incoming wave it sends back with all the information that's inside the tag embedded, like, recorded into this wave coming out, right? But this wave you can see is much weaker, right? So strong wave comes in, weak response out, okay? So because the energy is essentially what you captured, you just send out like portion of it, right? So it's very weak, can be missed easily, right? So these are passive tags. Passive, again, no own power source, right? So, and that would be class 0, 1, and 2. Starting from class 3, 4, and 5, these are active tags. They have their own battery, and the response is much stronger, okay? So class 0, that's how evolution happened. Class 0 was when the tag is manufactured. At the moment of the manufacture, we record information into that. It can be read multiple times, so it can be interrogated multiple times by the reader, but no changes to the info allowed, so it's not re-recordable. You record it once at the time of production, and that's it, done, okay? Then there was an evolution, right? So chips in the RFID tags became more sophisticated, and class 1 allows you to re-record the data inside the tag, but only once. So at the time of manufacturing, you record the data, and you can read multiple times, no problem. And then you can reuse it once, you can erase what's inside, record the new data, and then read multiple times, but that was it. That was the end of the life cycle. So 2 writing opportunities at the beginning, and then 1 more later on, okay? That's it. So class 2 is multiple read-writes. So you can record the info, read multiple times, erase, record again, read multiple times, erase, record again. So it's fully reusable tag. That's class 2, okay? And these are passive tags. Class 3, that's where active tags begin, right? So it has its own battery, okay? And that's the difference. So essentially it's a class 2 with the battery attached to that. So you can reuse it many times, and the response is much stronger than class 0, 1, or 2 passive tags, right? Class 4, it has its own battery, and it's actually actively transmitting. So traditional kind of sort of quote-unquote tag, it does not really blab stuff into the environment all the time, right? It responds only when interrogated, when the antenna reader sends the inquiry, okay? So class 4 tags, they actually don't wait for the wave, for the inquiry to come in. They transmit actively on their own. So they broadcast out there in the big scary world the info that's recorded inside of them, okay? And class 5, these are smart tags. They not only they have own power, not only they actively transmitting, they can communicate not just with reader, but with other smart tags, okay? Now, with all brutal honesty, right, tags that are actually used currently are class 2, okay? Class 3 is still under development. So this standard has not been, quote unquote, stabilized yet, but it's almost here, okay? And class 4 and 5, this is more like wishful thinking. These are like far from being even introduced to the world, okay? So currently, we're using just the passive tags, classes 0, 1, and 2, okay? All right, standards. Let's talk about standards. How many of you remember 50 million years ago when high-definition TVs just showed up and we needed high-definition movies, and the usual laser CD is not high-definition? There were 2 competing standards. One of them was Blu-ray and another was HD something or other. And there were like battle between them. So HDX? Something like that, yeah, I don't remember. And it was like big fat question, who will win, right? Will it be Blu-ray or this other HD format? And Blu-ray apparently won, right? The other one disappeared, went into oblivion. So every time a new technology comes up, usually that's what happens. There's more than one company behind this technology, and they want to dominate the field, and they want to introduce the standard that everybody else is going to use, and that's it, right? So two major standards, which are pretty much incompatible with each other. They're different, right? EPC stands for Electronic Product Code, developed by the same company that originally introduced the good old barcode readable by the laser guns, laser readers, right? So EPC. And there is ISO 18000. ISO stands for International Standards Organization. That's a competing standard, essentially, okay? So just to give you an idea, and these two standards are actually both I used, okay? So let's kind of have, what's the word I'm looking for? Philosophical, I guess, discussion, right? True or false? Every time when a new product is being introduced, there is a pretty big initial investment, which hopefully later is getting recovered.
True.
True, right? Like, take, for example, what's going on with generative AI right now. How much money did big boys put into the models? All these Microsofts and ChatGPTs and Googles. Close to $1 trillion. Yeah, it's enormous. It's unspeakable amount of money. Did they recover this investment?
Hopefully.
As of right now, not even close, right? So they burned close to $1 trillion, and whether or not it's going to pay back still remains to be seen, right? But they hope that they will start, a lot of companies will start using somehow the capability of the generative AI, and usually it's done on a subscription basis, right? You wanna use our service, pay for it, right? The more you use, the more you pay. So they hope that over the next few years / decades, this initial investment will be recovered, and they will get big fat profits out of that. But as of right now, it's pure money burn, basically, right? So RFID technology is the same thing, really, okay? So there was an initial investment, and companies behind that realized that if we don't kind of force to use this technology, then, there is a cost behind it, there is a development expenses, right? But if nobody's using it, then it will eventually die out, okay? So there is a push by the companies / organizations / governments to actually use RFID. What do I mean by that? EPC, like two biggest users, right? So EPC standard is used most notably by Walmart. Walmart, at some point, mandated its suppliers, when they send the shipments to Walmart distribution centers, to label their boxes / pallets with RFID tags. And they will use RFID to read the information from about items coming in, okay? So that's EPC, right? ISO 18000, the biggest user is Department of Defense in the US. What is the budget of the Department of Defense?
Unlimited, practically.
How much?
Pretty much unlimited. It's like
well, no. Congress allocates money, right, for the year. So how much was the latest allocation? $850 billion. So probably in a couple of years it's going to reach $1 trillion per year. That's defense, okay? So, true or false, Army buys a lot of stuff. Oh yeah. They buy ammunition, food, tanks, rockets, construction materials, everything and anything, right? The Department of Defense mandated its top 1,000 suppliers to do the same thing. Label the incoming shipments with RFID tags, okay? All right, so now let's talk about what exactly is inside the tag. How many of you guys are familiar with binary numbers? How numbers are represented in the computers? What's a binary number?
0 and 1.
0 and 1, right? And the elementary amount of data in the binary number is called bit. Bit is just one teeny tiny place where you can record either 0 or 1, and that's it, right? Bit actually stands for B binary, IT integer, okay? So, The EPC standard for the data is actually 96-bit. Okay, so that means that inside these small, teeny tiny computer chips, there are 96 zeros or ones recorded. Okay, so every time when the tag is interrogated with the reader, it sends out 96 digits, zeros and ones. So wave comes in, it sends back 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, right? Something like that. Okay, 96 of these things. Okay, so how exactly these 90s, what do they represent? Well, first 8 bits you can see, right, is the header, which represents the version of the standard. So true or false, the data storage standards, they change over time. Like electronic standard. Okay, let's do the example. How many of you are familiar with IP address? What's IP address? IP address is a unique number of the device on the internet, right? That's IP address. So IP address originally, so let me just go ahead and do that. So IP version 4. That's how internet was designed, okay? So something like 168.212.18.96, right? Something like that, IP address. So each of these numbers is actually between 0 and 255. So in other words, 256 numbers, right? Which also happens to be 2 to the power of 8. Okay? So in other words, each one of these numbers is actually represented as 8 bits. So IP address is essentially 8 bits separated from next 8 bits, separated from next 8 bits, separated from next. So for the total, we have what? 32 bits. That's our good old IP address. That's how internet was designed originally. Well, with the development of the devices, how many of you heard about IoT, Internet of Things? Yeah. What's Internet of Things?
Interconnectedness between devices.
Yeah. And what kind of devices they might be?
Phones, laptops, barcode readers, cars.
Yep. Anything that has a network interface card, right? That supports TCP/IP protocol can be plugged into the network. It can be, like you said, right? Obvious examples are laptops, desktops, phones, cars, right? It can be your oven at home. It can be your microwave. It can be the temperature sensor in your fish tank at home. Anything really, right? So, say what?
Alexa.
Yeah, Alexa, if you like a device spying on you all the time, yes. How many of you have Alexa, just out of curiosity? Okay, all right. Do you guys feel a little bit watched?
Yeah, but what are they going to find out?
Yeah, I don't.
Google already has all the information they need about me.
Yeah, so this thing is listening, right, what we're saying.
I'm like, what are you going to find out? You're going to track me going to the bathroom?
Yeah, well, possibly, yeah.
Probably.
Who knows what they're collecting,
Hey,
right?
this guy pisses a lot.
So, with Internet of Things, there are so many devices that can be connected to the internet, right? So, IP protocol has evolved, and now we are, I believe, using IP version 6, which is based not on 32 bits, but on 128 bits. It represents bazillions of trillions of gazillions of possible devices connected with different IP addresses, right? So everything evolves, that's what I'm saying, right? Same thing with the EPC, right? The electronic product code. So first 8 bits, they tell you what version of the EPC standard that particular tag contains, right? Next one, 28 bits out of 96 identifies manufacturer. But with 28 bits, you can identify 2 to the power 28. That happens to be 268 million possible producers, manufacturers. So you can identify the company down to the plant level. Which factory in what location produced that particular item, okay? So that's the manufacturer ID. Next one, 24 bits or almost 17 million combinations, identifies product family. So what do I mean by product family? Let's say, I don't know, you're manufacturing coffee mugs, right? Coffee mugs come in all different shapes and sizes, but let's say you're saying, okay, so it's going to be a 16-ounce coffee mug, right? And there are like a bunch of different manufacturers, but the product family is 16-ounce coffee mugs, right? So there are 17 million possible different product families, probably more than enough to represent anything and everything on this planet, right? And the next 16 bits of the 98 is 60, almost 9 billion combinations that represent individual items. So in other words, if there are 16 billion manufacturers that make coffee mugs, each one of them is different, we can still represent them, right? So that would be 96 bits is enough to represent anything and everything, right? Who produced that, what type of product is that, and what specific individual item serial number for that specific coffee mug or cell phone or engine or whatever, right? So that's basically what's recorded inside the RFID tag. 96 zeros and ones, they encode info about stuff, right? Where is that coming from, okay? All right, awesome. So let's go to the next one. So how exactly does the system work? So again, remember I told you that one of the advantages is number one, doesn't require direct line of sight, okay? So if the tag is inside the box, and the box is not visible, the item, right? The item is inside the box, and the tag is not visible from the outside, that is okay. Because wave goes through the cardboard and then out, okay? So no need to even see the tag to read the data about that, okay? That's number one, right? Abstractions, I mean, two reasonable abstractions, right? If you put it behind a concrete wall, nothing's gonna happen, obviously, right? But also, no humans are present, okay? So here, well, first of all, let's chit-chat quickly about how tagging can be done. Well, we can tag big fat container. You've seen container ship, I'm sure, on the highway, right? Being placed on the truck trailer. You can tag the entire container, right? And it will say that we have inside, you know, coffee mugs manufactured in Shanghai, China. That's the origin. This is the item ID. This is the manufacturer ID, etc., right? You can tag a pallet. So a bunch of boxes stuck together with one RFID tag for the entire pallet. You can tag individual boxes, multiple items inside, or you can even tag the individual items, right? So how tagging can be done, it depends on, you know, how, well, we're going to discuss later. Not today, next class. It's one of the challenges, actually, to the universal widespread adoption to the tags, okay? Like tagging on the level of individual items may not be feasible. That's the problem, right? Okay, cool. So then there is a reader, right? We saw that the reader does not really require human, right? It just sends the wave, tag replies back, done, right? No humans inside. Okay, cool. Then what happens? Well, before that, let's chit-chat about what the readers look like. Readers can be portable, and I'm going to be honest, I lifted that from the internet, right? Google Images. Right? This is the handheld, so you can basically, you know, carry that around and not point to anything particular. As you walk past the item, sends the wave, reads the info back, done, right? So it's portable. Or it can be stationary. So I'm going to actually make it bigger. So here you can see warehouse employee, right? Just pulling the pallet with a bunch of boxes into the gate, and there appears to be a truck trailer, right? But do you see this cool-looking yellow towers on the right and on the left? That's basically the reader, okay? So as this guy is pulling the pallet in between the readers, RFID tags, wherever they are, will reply, okay? And the readers will actually capture the zeros and ones generated by these tags, okay? So that's the reader part. What happens next? Next, we need to save it somewhere, okay? So let's talk about client-server architecture. How many of you heard before, you guys, the words client-server architecture? Nobody? That's a shame, because client-server is something that we use on the daily basis, okay? So when you're browsing stuff on Amazon, you're using client-server. When you are checking the CNU email, you're using client-server. When you are watching, Jesus Christ, I don't know, YouTube videos, that's client-server, or TikTok, okay? Anything on the internet is client-server. What do I mean by that? There is a central server somewhere out there, okay? So, and I have, you can see, I have this, the frame, right? That includes this funky-looking computer and the cylinder which says database, okay? So let me ask you this question, you guys. Server is a hardware, not a software. True or false? Well, first of all, is server a hardware? Is such a thing as a hardware server?
Yes.
Yes. It's a big fat machine with a bunch of memory, right? And powerful CPUs, probably several CPUs, right? Which is plugged into the network, and it sits out there and does stuff, right? Okay. Is server also a software? Yes. Yes. Okay. So software that, for example, sends you web pages, okay? What do you think happens when you go online and type in your browser www.amazon.com? Your browser, which by the way is called client machine because it wants to receive a web page, it requests a web page, it makes a connection with Amazon server, which is a hardware and a software, okay? These are two different things, hardware server and the software server. So software server is basically a program that runs on the hardware server all the time, and it listens on the wires that are coming in, okay? And as long as your computer, the client, makes a request, the server software that runs on the server hardware, it sees that the request came in on one of the ports. There is such thing as port, okay? And it says where the request came from and what's that for, okay? And then it generates the web page and sends it back to you. So server essentially is a powerful machine which runs server software that sends out, services requests, right? So web server serves you the web pages, okay? So the client, right? So the readers, it can be a stationary reader or it can be a mobile reader. After they interrogated the RFID tags and read back the response, right? Then the reader, being the client device, it uses the network to send these 96 zeros and ones, the content of the RFID, to the server. And the server can be either local, let's say this is the warehouse right here, right? And in the back room somewhere there is a server, like physical machine with a program on it running, right? Sitting, and of course, there is a network connection. It can be wired network or it can be wireless network, but the client, the reader, the machine, right? It sends through the network the 96 bits that it just received from the tag. It sends through the network to the server, and the server records that, saves it in the database, okay? Or it can be server sitting somewhere else, right? So it doesn't have to be local network. It can be like the server that collects the data can be actually corporate server in, I don't know, Atlanta, Georgia, right? Home Depot, Atlanta, Georgia, right? So you receive stuff in the distribution warehouse, Home Depot distribution warehouse, in somewhere in North Carolina, right? You drag the pallet through the gate of the warehouse. The reader picks up the signal from the RFID tag. It sends it through the internet to mothership in Paces Ferry Road, Atlanta, Georgia, and the server is actually sitting there and it's recording the data that is being sent from North Carolina warehouse, right? And it goes into the database. So you can see that the only human present in this picture is this guy pulling the pallet, right? Everything else is done by the software / hardware. So that's the beauty of it, okay? We can drag the entire pallet of product through the what's it called? Through the reader, right? And immediately we update the records about the inventory. What has been shipped / received, where exactly, how many units, right? So all of that happened without any human intervention. That's the beauty of the system, okay? All right, so, and that slide essentially emphasizes, like, explains what I just told you, right? Tag responds, right? Reader reads the tags and then connects to the, transmits the data from the reader to the server. It can be local server or server in the corporate headquarters, and the server writes it down in the database, right? That's it. Okay, cool. So let's do this, okay? This is going to be pretty much the last slide, because this I'm going to leave out for after the break, okay? What are the applications, right? What are the use cases? Well, number one, let's start actually with manufacturing, okay? True or false, in this day and age, a lot of manufacturers can customize the product for you. So, like for example, can you go on Dell.com and instead of buying ready off-the-shelf laptop, you can specify what screen size you want, what CPU you want, i5, i7, i9, right? How much RAM do you need? What's the storage should be? All these things, right? You can customize your stuff, right? So imagine yourself being, running the like assembly line, okay? So you can basically start putting together this computer, but as the computer moves down the assembly line, right? We should know what put next into this computer, right? What memory to insert, how many gigs, etc., right? How many CPUs, what CPU you want, etc., right? So you can just basically put this info into the RFID chip, put it together with this computer. As it travels down the assembly line, it arrives to the workstation. There is a reader. It interrogates the tag and shows on the display, like, okay, how much memory should this computer contain? So it's being assembled to the order, but the order is not like a piece of paper that travels with it. The order is actually electronic, and it's inside the RFID tag, and it's displayed automatically. So that's an example of manufacturing, right? Okay, materials management, distribution, etc. Okay, items come in, right? So items come into your warehouse, should be pretty obvious, right? You drag them in the gate, like near the antenna, near the reader, right? The reader interrogates the tags, reads the data, and updates inventory. So you just, the reader just read that, we have received a pallet of coffee mugs, that particular type, this particular count coming from that particular manufacturer. That information is automatically recorded in the database. The records are updated. No humans needed, right? So that's an obvious one, right? Goods automatically counted and logged in to the database as they arrive in the warehouse, right? Don't have to do anything. Distribution center, right? So, for example, let's say I'm other way around, right? I'm a supplier and I'm sending the order out to the buyer, to the customer, right? So I load the truck, same thing happens, right? I drag the pallets through the reader. The reader says, okay, we just shipped one box of the mugs, right? This is the product ID, this is the count, all things respond, all different boxes respond. We know what's the count per box, right? So we can actually figure out how many mugs we shipped. Okay, inventory is being updated again, reduced this time around. We don't have these things anymore. They were shipped to the customer, right? But also, here is the question for you guys. you buy something from Amazon. Let's say you buy a coffee mug. True or false? When the coffee mug is inside the Amazon warehouse, legally it belongs to Amazon. Yes. When it arrives to your door, legally it belongs to you, right? At what point the ownership switches from Amazon to you?
When it gets to your porch?
When it's shipped. The moment when the product crosses into the truck, when they don't have it in the warehouse, legal ownership switches. Amazon does not own this mug anymore. It's you. Okay. So and Amazon illegally, like according to accounting regulations, at that point in time, they can charge your credit card. They can invoice you. They can send you the invoice for that thing and start charging you. Okay, not earlier. So they cannot charge your credit card while having the ownership of the goods. Okay, so when the goods cross, why am I telling you this, right? When you drag the pallet through the gates, right? That's the moment when ownership changes, right? From the seller to the buyer. And at that point in time, you can start invoicing them, right? So the system, electronic computerized system, can start generating the shipping invoice, shipping notice, and sending out the invoice to the buyer. Again, without human intervention. We just ship things. We can legally start invoicing them. Bam. Done. Then the retail stores, right? So I'm sure you heard about Amazon. What's it called? Amazon did, it was an experiment for them, right? Store where you can just put things and then walk out, and that's it, right?
I think it's Amazon Go or something.
Yeah, Amazon, yeah, something like that, Amazon Go. So how does that happen? When you come in, you probably punch in your Amazon account, right? Log into the system, they know who you are, right? They know, they have your credit card tied to your account. So when you put stuff in the cart and walk out, all the items basically are being tagged. Reader, interrogates all the tags. It knows what you carried out, and it invoices you for that thing, right? So simple like that. And then sometimes, they also track the inventory movement. So for example, Dick's Sporting Goods can have tags on the, let's say, basketballs, right? So basketball is sold in this cardboard box, right? You can put a tag on it. So when you go to the shelf and take it out and bring it to the checkout counter, next time, and there is a reader, like small reader on the shelf, right? Next time the reader will send the wave out, one less ball will respond back, so that's how they know that, ball probably was bought, so reduce inventory. And it can trigger the purchase order after that, okay? So there are a lot of applications, but of course, you can't get something for nothing, right? So you would think that, oh my God, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody should be using the RFID tags, and when I go to Walmart, I don't see items, all of them, right? I still have to scan them through the checkout, right? So they don't have RFID tags in Walmart. Maybe on the incoming pallets, right? But not on the individual items. So that means that it's not that simple, right? So when we come back from the break, we're going to discuss the last slide. Okay, what are the issues? Why RFID is not everywhere? What are the problems with that? Okay, so we're done for today, and